She walked through the music academy quietly, her shoes making soft noises on the polished floor. No one really noticed her. She wasn't dressed fancy and her hair was tied back in a simple bun. People often walked past her as if she didn't exist. She worked at the academy, cleaning the classrooms and hallways after hours, and sometimes during the day when the office was busy. But even though she was invisible to most, she had a secret love, a love for music. Every day she would pass by the piano rooms, listening carefully to the sounds drifting out of the doors. Sometimes a student would be practicing a difficult piece, and she would pause just outside the room, letting the notes fill her heart. She didn't play in front of anyone anymore. Life had been hard, and she had given up the dream of performing. But music never left her. It was like a quiet friend she could always return to. The academy was full of young students who were loud and proud. They wore the latest clothes, carried fancy instrument cases, and competed to be noticed by the teachers. The teachers themselves were strict and expected perfection. They would walk around, correcting a wrong finger placement or a missed note, and the students would respond with nervous nods. No one expected the plain woman to know anything about music. She didn't have a fancy instrument. She didn't have a suit, a badge, or a performance history. To everyone, she was just the cleaner. One evening, after the students had gone home, she was mopping the floor near the piano practice rooms. The sound of scales and exercises floated through the air. She paused and leaned on her mop, closing her eyes for a moment. Memories of her past lessons returned. She remembered the first time she had touched a piano, how the smooth keys had felt under her fingers, and how she had dreamed of playing in front of a crowd. But life had other plans, and those dreams had to wait. As she stood there, a teacher walked past. He noticed her listening and frowned. "Why are you always standing there, staring?" he asked, his voice sharp but curious. The students in the room laughed quietly, thinking it was funny. "Are you trying to learn by spying?" She smiled softly but didn't answer at first. She wasn't there to cause trouble. "I just like to listen," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper, but there was honesty in it. The teacher raised an eyebrow. He didn't know what to make of her. Most people in the academy thought music was about show and performance, about being loud and impressive. But here was someone who quietly loved it for itself. It was unusual. He walked away, shaking his head, not sure whether to be amused or annoyed. After he left, she continued with her work, moving from room to room. The students had all gone home, and the silence of the academy was comforting. She could hear the echoes of her own footsteps and the distant hum of a piano in the empty hall. Music was alive here, even when no one was playing it, and she felt at home. The next day, the academy was buzzing with excitement. The students were talking about a new challenge, a piano piece that no one had successfully mastered. They called it impossible. The notes were fast, complex, and required a skill most of them didn't have. Whispers spread through the halls, and some students even said it was designed to scare beginners. Everyone was nervous, worried about being judged. She overheard some of them laughing. "No one can play that," one student said. "It's too hard. You'd have to be a genius." Another student added, "Yeah, even the teachers don't think anyone will get it right. It's hopeless." She listened quietly, not showing any reaction. Her heart started to beat a little faster, not with fear, but with curiosity. She knew the piece. Years ago, she had studied music with a dedicated teacher who had made her practice similar complex compositions. Those days seemed far away, almost like a different life. But the memory of playing that kind of music was still alive inside her. Later that afternoon, the main piano teacher was walking through the hallway, watching students practice. He was a man with a strong presence, and he liked to challenge students, often pushing them to their limits. He noticed the plain woman standing quietly in the hall again, listening. For some reason he stopped and looked at her. There was a mischievous spark in his eyes. "Do you want to try it?" he asked suddenly, pointing to the impossible piano piece. His voice was half serious, half teasing. The students nearby burst out laughing. They didn't think she would dare. To them, she wasn't a student. and certainly not someone who could touch a piano with skill. For a moment, she hesitated. The room was filled with eyes, all staring at her. Some were curious, some mocking, and some doubtful. But instead of stepping back, she took a deep breath. "Yes," she said simply. The laughter stopped. There was a moment of silence, and even the teacher blinked, surprised by her calm answer. No one had expected her to agree. The students muttered among themselves, some still laughing quietly, some watching with wide eyes. They were waiting for her to fail, to be embarrassed, to run away. She walked to the piano slowly, feeling the smooth wooden floor under her shoes. She touched the keys for the first time in years. Her fingers hovered above them, unsure at first, but there was a strange familiarity. She remembered how her hands had once learned the patterns, the scales, and the delicate movements. It was like meeting an old friend she hadn't seen in a long time. The teacher gave her only a few minutes to prepare. He expected her to panic, to falter, or to refuse completely. But she didn't. She focused on the piano, letting the quiet of the academy surround her. The students who were still present leaned forward slightly, curiosity replacing some of their mockery. They didn't know what was about to happen, but they could feel that something unusual was in the air. Her mind drifted back to her past training. She remembered the hours she had spent practicing alone, the nights when the world seemed asleep and only the piano and she were awake. She remembered the sweat, the tears, and the small victories when her fingers finally hit the right note at the right time. All of that came rushing back. She was no longer the plain woman who worked quietly in the academy. She was a pianist, even if no one had seen it in years. She had a connection with music that couldn't be measured by appearances or judgments. And as she prepared to play, she felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. She knew the room expected failure, but she also knew that music had a way of surprising everyone, including teachers and students alike. And in that quiet moment, before she touched the first key, she made a silent promise to herself. No matter what happened next, she would let the music speak. She wouldn't worry about laughter or disbelief. She would play not for applause or recognition, but because it was the one thing she had never truly given up. The stage was set. The impossible piece awaited her, and the room held its breath. What happened next would change how everyone in that academy saw her, and perhaps how they saw talent and perseverance forever. The academy hall grew quiet as she approached the piano. The students who had been joking and whispering just moments before now stared in anticipation. Even the teachers leaned in, curious about what would happen. They didn't expect much. After all, she had always been the quiet woman in the background, the cleaner, the one who never drew attention. How could someone like her play an impossible piece? She took a deep breath and sat down on the piano bench. The wood felt cool under her palms. She looked at the sheet music, the notes flowing across the page in a pattern so complex that it made the students shiver. They had spent weeks practicing this piece, and most had struggled to play even a small part correctly. Some had failed so many times that they had given up, thinking it was beyond their abilities. Her fingers hovered over the keys, almost trembling for a second. It had been a long time since she had played in front of anyone, and the pressure felt enormous. But she closed her eyes for a moment and let herself breathe. She remembered the times she had played alone in her small apartment, when the night was silent and the world had no eyes on her. She remembered the joy, the sadness, and the emotions she had poured into every note. That feeling came rushing back, and it steadied her hands. Then she pressed the first key. A single note filled the room, clear and confident. It was unexpected, and the students blinked in surprise. The teachers raised their eyebrows. The note wasn't loud or flashy, but it was precise and full of emotion. It was a simple beginning, yet it carried a sense of control and understanding that no one had anticipated. She continued, moving into the first few measures of the piece. Her fingers danced over the keys with a smoothness that seemed effortless. Each note was placed perfectly, each pause timed naturally. The music flowed from her, not forced, not rushed, but as if it had always existed inside her, waiting to be released. The students exchanged glances. Some couldn't believe their eyes. Others felt a pang of embarrassment for having doubted her. The laughter and whispers from earlier had vanished, replaced by an almost reverent silence. No one moved. No one dared interrupt. They simply watched, captivated by the sound she produced. The teacher who had issued the challenge was leaning over the piano slightly, his face unreadable. He had expected a quick failure, a moment of awkward fumbling, and then a retreat back into the shadows. But what he was seeing now was something entirely different. Her skill was undeniable. Her timing, her expression, the way she brought the music to life, it was beyond anything the students had imagined. As she played further into the piece, the room seemed to change. The notes filled every corner, bouncing softly off the walls and ceiling. It was as if the music itself was creating a new space, one where the usual rules of the academy competition, judgment, hierarchy didn't exist. Everyone listening felt caught in a moment that was larger than themselves. Some students felt a lump in their throats. They had spent so long trying to master this piece, thinking they were at their best, only to realize that someone they had ignored for years could surpass them with ease. They had laughed at her, dismissed her, and treated her as if she was invisible. Now, the sound she made reminded them that talent and dedication were not always visible on the surface, she continued, reaching the most difficult section of the piece. The notes were faster now, demanding precision and focus. The audience held their breath. Every student who had tried and failed before had struggled with this part, some breaking into frustration or giving up entirely. But she did not hesitate. Her fingers moved with speed and accuracy, hitting every note with confidence. The music didn't sound forced. It sounded alive, vibrant, and completely natural. The teacher's eyes widened. He had been sure that even if she could play the first part, the challenging section would reveal her limits. But she didn't falter. Each chord, each trill, each rapid succession of notes flowed seamlessly into the next. Her skill was undeniable, and it carried a deep understanding of the piece, not just technical ability. As the music rose and fell, the emotions behind it became impossible to ignore. Some students felt a chill. Others felt tears welling up in their eyes. The music was no longer just a demonstration of skill. It was a story, a reflection of struggle, perseverance, and passion. Every note spoke of someone who had loved music so deeply that she had never let go, even when life made it impossible to pursue. For the first time, the Academy realized something important. Talent is not always obvious. It does not always announce itself with flashy performances or loud confidence. Sometimes it is hidden in quiet corners, in people who move through the world unnoticed yet carry something extraordinary inside. She was one of those people. By the time she reached the final measures of the piece, the room was completely silent except for the music. The students and teachers had forgotten to breathe. They had forgotten their judgment and expectations. All that mattered was the sound filling the hall, the story she was telling through her fingers, and then she played the last note. It hung in the air for a moment, pure and full, before fading into silence. The room stayed frozen. No one moved, no one spoke, not even the teacher who had issued the challenge. It was as if time itself had stopped to acknowledge what had just happened. Then, slowly, a few students began to clap. Their applause was quiet at first, almost tentative, as if they were testing reality. Then more joined in. The sound grew, filling the academy with a wave of astonishment and admiration. Some students were wiping their eyes, unable to believe what they had just heard. The teachers finally stepped forward, clapping with genuine respect. The man who had challenged her smiled, shaking his head in amazement. He had not expected this. No one had. She sat there for a moment, breathing deeply, letting the applause wash over her. Her hands still hovered above the keys, trembling slightly from the adrenaline and emotion of the performance. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. This was not just about playing a difficult piece, it was about reclaiming a part of herself that she had almost forgotten. The students began to ask questions, their voices full of curiosity. "How did you learn this?" one asked. "Where did you practice?" Another wanted to know. Even the teachers were eager to understand her story. She smiled softly. "I learned long ago," she said. and I practiced whenever I could. Even when it seemed impossible, I never stopped." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of experience and truth. In that moment, she realized something important too. She had been invisible for so long, underestimated by everyone, but it didn't matter. The music had always seen her. The music had always recognized her dedication, her passion, and her talent. And now, the people around her could finally see it too. The students who had laughed at her earlier were now silent, their expressions a mix of embarrassment and awe. They had underestimated someone they thought was ordinary, only to discover that extraordinary talent often hides in plain sight. For the teacher, it was a lesson as well. He had always believed that talent could be measured by appearances, by confidence, or by past achievements. But he was wrong. What mattered most was the love for the craft, the perseverance to continue even when no one was watching, and the courage to step forward when the moment came. She closed the piano gently and stood up. The room still buzzed with energy and amazement. People were talking, some softly, some excitedly, but the impression she had made could not be erased. She had taken a step that no one expected and had changed the way everyone in the academy thought about her and about music itself. That day marked a turning point. Not just for her, but for everyone who witnessed it. The quiet woman, the one who had always been overlooked, had reminded them all of a simple truth. Talent and passion cannot be measured by looks, status, or assumptions. They are seen in the heart, heard in the music, and felt in moments of honesty and courage. As she returned to her cleaning duties later that day, she walked with a quiet confidence she had never felt before. People still looked at her differently, some with newfound respect, some with curiosity, but it didn't matter. She had already proven something important to herself and to the world. The impossible piano piece had been played, and it had been played perfectly. But more than that, a story had been told, a story of perseverance, hidden talent, and the power of believing in oneself, even when everyone else doubts you. And so, her journey was just beginning. The challenge had been met, but the opportunities that awaited her were far greater than anyone could have imagined. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine what could happen next. The applause gradually faded, leaving a quiet that felt almost sacred. The students and teachers were still recovering from what they had just witnessed. Their eyes followed her as she slowly stood from the piano bench, hands still trembling slightly from the effort. It wasn't just the technical perfection that had shocked them. It was the depth, the emotion, the story she had told through each note. A few students whispered to each other. "Did you see that?" One said, still wide-eyed. "I've never heard anything like it." Another added, She wasn't just playing notes. She was telling a story." "Every single one hit me right here," he said, tapping his chest. They all felt it. The music had reached a place deeper than skill alone could touch. The teacher who had given her the impossible challenge was leaning on the piano, shaking his head in disbelief. He had expected a quiet failure, a brief attempt followed by embarrassment. But what he had witnessed was something entirely different. It wasn't just her hands on the keys that amazed him, it was her connection to the music. It was clear that she had lived and breathed these notes long before this moment, even if no one had seen it. He cleared his throat and spoke, his voice a mixture of awe and curiosity. Where did you learn to play like that?" His question hung in the air. The room was silent again, waiting for her answer. The students who had once dismissed her were now leaning forward, eager to hear her story. She looked at him and then at the curious faces of the students. A small, humble smile formed on her lips. "I learned long ago," she said softly. "Before I worked here, before life got in the way, I trained every day. Music was everything to me. And even when I had to stop performing, I never stopped practicing in secret. Whenever I could find a piano, I would play." The teachers exchanged glances. They were starting to realize that their assumptions had been completely wrong. They had thought she was just a plain, ordinary woman, someone who belonged in the background. They had never considered that she might carry such extraordinary talent. And now, they felt a mixture of admiration and regret for having overlooked her for so long. One of the students, unable to contain his curiosity, asked, Why did you stop performing? If you were this good, why didn't anyone know? She paused, her eyes reflecting memories of difficult times. Life doesn't always let you follow your dreams the way you want, she said gently. I had responsibilities, challenges I couldn't ignore. But music was never gone. It was always a part of me, even when no one else could see it. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Everyone in the room understood that she had sacrificed much to survive, yet she had never let go of her passion. The students who had once mocked her now looked at her with respect. Some of them even felt ashamed for their earlier behavior. They had laughed, assuming she had no skill, no talent, no story to tell. But now they saw someone who had endured, who had practiced in secret, and who could create magic with her hands. They realized that appearances could be deceiving, and that true ability sometimes hides in plain sight. The main teacher finally stepped closer. His voice had softened, filled with newfound respect. You have more talent than many of our top students combined, he said. And not just talent, the courage to play when no one expected you to. That is rare. Very rare. Her cheeks flushed slightly. She wasn't used to praise, at least not this kind of honest recognition. She had spent so long working quietly, never seeking attention, that being acknowledged felt strange and almost overwhelming. Yet, beneath the modesty, a quiet pride began to grow. This was the moment her efforts and hidden dedication had been recognized. Another teacher spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. We've been wrong about you. We judged based on what we saw, your appearance, your quiet nature, but we failed to see the music inside you. And it is extraordinary. The woman nodded, letting the words sink in. She understood their meaning, and she also understood something deeper. Talent and perseverance are often invisible until the right moment brings them to light. She had always known her skill existed, but now others could see it too. The students who had laughed earlier began asking questions more respectfully this time. Can you teach us some of that? One asked. How do you play with so much feeling? Another student added, how do you remember everything and make it sound so natural? She smiled softly. It's not just practice or memory, she explained. It's about understanding the music, feeling it in your heart. You have to listen to it, not just with your ears, but with yourself. And you must never give up, even when it seems impossible. Her words weren't just instructions, they were lessons in life. Everyone listening felt that she was speaking to more than just their musical abilities. She was teaching them about patience, dedication, and resilience. The students sat quietly, absorbing her advice. Some were taking mental notes, others were thinking about their own struggles, realizing how easy it is to judge others without knowing their story. They understood that her skill had not come overnight, it had been built over years of quiet determination. Even when no one was watching, the teacher who had challenged her earlier stepped back, letting her words and presence settle over the room. He realized that the academy had been wrong to focus so much on appearances, competition, and visible achievement. Here was someone who had endured hardships, practiced alone, and had now emerged to show a level of mastery few had ever seen. He silently admitted to himself that he had underestimated the power of persistence and the depth of hidden talent. She stood in the middle of the room, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. She had played the impossible piece, shown her skill, and shared a part of her journey. But she also understood that this was only the beginning. There were more opportunities ahead, more moments where her music could inspire, teach, and touch others. One of the older students, who had been practicing for years, approached her hesitantly. I didn't think you could do it, he admitted almost shyly. I'm sorry for doubting you. That was amazing. She smiled kindly, placing a hand on his shoulder. It's okay. Everyone doubts at times. What matters is what you do when the doubt is there. Keep practicing and keep believing in yourself. That's all that matters. Her words felt like a balm, not just for him, but for everyone in the room. The students began talking among themselves, more quietly now, discussing the piece, the performance, and what they had learned. The laughter from earlier was gone, replaced by respect and curiosity. They had witnessed a lesson in humility and dedication that they would not forget. The woman returned to her cleaning duties later that day, but something had changed. The hallways no longer felt the same. Students and teachers looked at her differently, some with admiration, some with curiosity, but all with a new understanding. She had shown them that what mattered most is not what you look like or how others perceive you, but the effort, passion, and persistence you put into what you love. As she mopped the floors quietly, she felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't felt in years. She had taken a risk by agreeing to play the impossible piece, and it had paid off not just in recognition, but in reclaiming a part of herself she thought she had lost. She realized that talent isn't just about being seen. It's about never giving up, no matter how impossible things may seem. Her performance had been a revelation for the Academy, but it was also a turning point for her. She knew that this was the moment where her quiet, hidden dedication could finally begin to shine in ways she had never imagined. And as she worked silently, she allowed herself to dream again, knowing that the impossible could be achieved when determination and love for what you do come together. For the students and teachers, the memory of that performance would stay with them forever. They had been reminded that appearances can be deceiving, that talent can hide in the most unexpected places, and that courage and passion are sometimes more important than natural skill alone. They had learned to look beyond the surface and to appreciate the person behind the music, not just the music itself, and for her, the journey was only beginning. The impossible had been played, the challenge met, and a new chapter in her life had opened. She would never again be just a quiet woman in the background. The music had chosen her to speak, and now the world would finally listen. After the applause and admiration had settled, the teachers and students still couldn't stop talking about her performance. They were curious, not just about her skill, but about her story. Who was this quiet, plain woman who could play an impossible piano piece with such mastery? The questions hung in the air, buzzing in every corner of the Academy. The main teacher, the one who had first issued the challenge, finally stepped forward. He had been strict and skeptical for so long, always judging students by their confidence and appearance. But now, standing in front of someone who had completely shattered all expectations, he felt humbled. "We need to understand," he said to the others. "There is more to her than we realize. She didn't just learn this overnight. Someone with this skill, she has a story we don't know." The woman, who had been quietly returning to her duties, paused. She looked up at the group of curious faces staring at her. For a moment she felt nervous. Sharing her past wasn't easy. It was full of sacrifices, struggles, and disappointments. But she realized that hiding it no longer mattered. Her music had spoken, and now it was time for her story to be heard. She took a deep breath and began. "Years ago," she said softly, "I studied music seriously. I wanted to become a professional pianist. I trained every day, but life didn't make it easy. My family needed me. I had responsibilities I couldn't ignore. I had to stop performing, even though it broke my heart. But I never stopped loving music. I practiced in secret, whenever I could, on pianos I had access to, even if they were old or broken. Music was my escape, my comfort, and my companion." The students listened, some with wide eyes, others with mouths slightly open. They had never imagined that someone who had seemed so ordinary could carry such a history. The laughter, the mockery, and the doubt from earlier now felt like a distant memory. What they were hearing was real, raw, and inspiring. One teacher, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "So all this time you were hiding your talent? Practicing in secret?" she asked. Her voice carried both admiration and a hint of guilt for not noticing sooner. The woman nodded. "Yes, I didn't have the chance to perform in front of anyone. Life demanded other things from me. But music was never gone. Even when I wasn't visible to the world, it was a part of me. It shaped who I am. And now I get a chance to share it again." There was a moment of silence. The weight of her words settled over the room. The students, who had been competitive and self-conscious, felt humbled. They realized that talent isn't always about practice hours that others can see or performances that are applauded. Sometimes it is about persistence, passion, and dedication that no one else witnesses. One of the younger students spoke up timidly. I I feel like I judged you wrongly before, he admitted. I thought you were just a quiet woman who worked here, nothing more. I'm sorry. She smiled gently. It's okay. People judge when they don't know the full story. What matters is what you do with your chances and how you treat others once you learn the truth. Her words were soft, yet powerful. Everyone listening felt the honesty in them. The main teacher stepped closer, his expression thoughtful. You've shown us all a lesson today, he said. It's not just about skill or technique. It's about heart, dedication, and resilience. What you have accomplished performing that impossible piece under pressure after all these years is extraordinary. You've earned respect, not because of appearance or position, but because of your persistence and love for music. She felt a small swell of pride, but it was quiet, internal. She had never performed for recognition. She had performed for herself, for the music, for the joy it gave her. Yet this acknowledgement was meaningful. It told her that the years of quiet dedication, the hidden practice, and the sacrifices were not in vain. Another teacher, with a softer voice, added, We want to offer you a chance to continue your musical journey formally. The Academy can provide lessons, guidance, and even performance opportunities if you want. You don't have to hide your talent anymore. Her heart skipped a beat. This was more than she had ever dared to hope for. For years, she had dreamed quietly, imagining performing again, but never expecting the world to welcome her back. Now the possibility was real. She could reclaim the dream she had almost lost, and maybe even inspire others along the way. The students were watching, eager and attentive. They could feel the significance of the moment. Here was someone who had endured hardship and continued her passion despite all odds. And now she was being given a chance to shine fully. They understood that opportunity combined with talent and perseverance could change everything. She nodded slowly, a determined smile forming. I would like that, she said. I want to continue learning, performing, and sharing music. I never stopped dreaming, and now I can finally take the next step. The room filled with a quiet cheer, not loud but heartfelt. It wasn't just about excitement. It was about recognition, respect, and hope. The Academy had witnessed something rare, a reminder that talent often lives quietly, waiting for the right moment to shine. One of the older students approached her carefully. Can I watch and learn from you? He asked. You've inspired me. I want to try to understand music the way you do. She smiled and nodded. Of course. Music is meant to be shared. I can teach and you can learn, but the most important thing is to love it, practice it, and never give up. The atmosphere in the Academy had completely shifted. What had been a place of strict rules, competition, and judgment had become one of inspiration and respect. The students began seeing each other differently too. They realized that talent doesn't always show itself in ways that are immediately visible, and that everyone has their own struggles, strengths, and stories. As she continued to talk with teachers and students, sharing bits of her journey and her approach to music, it became clear that her influence would go beyond just her performance. She had opened a door for others who felt unseen or underestimated. She had shown them that dedication and passion, even when hidden, could lead to extraordinary moments. Later that day, as she walked through the hallways, people looked at her with newfound respect. Some smiled at her, some nodded in acknowledgement. She felt seen not just as a quiet worker in the background, but as a person with a talent and a story worth noticing. The Academy had given her more than recognition. It had given her a chance to step fully into the life she had always wanted, and to inspire others to pursue their own dreams. No matter how impossible they seemed, she realized that her journey had been about more than just playing the piano. It had been about resilience, courage, and believing in herself when no one else did. And now, for the first time in many years, she felt that her path forward was wide open. The opportunity to continue her passion, to teach, perform, and share her music was no longer a distant dream. It was real, and it was waiting for her to take it. The Academy, which had once ignored her, now looked like a place of possibility. She could see students practicing with renewed energy, teachers approaching their lessons with a different perspective, and a sense of community forming around respect and inspiration. Her presence had changed the environment, showing that sometimes one act of courage and talent can inspire far more than anyone could imagine, and so, as she prepared to take the next steps in her musical journey, she felt a quiet strength inside her. She had faced challenges, hidden her talent, and endured years of doubt and invisibility. But now she had been recognized and her future was open. She would not waste this chance. She would play, teach, and inspire, showing that passion and perseverance could overcome even the most impossible obstacles. Her story was no longer hidden in the shadows. It was alive, vibrant, and full of promise. And for everyone at the academy, it became a powerful lesson. Never underestimate someone based on appearances. And never forget that talent and heart often live quietly until the right moment brings them to light. From that day forward, the quiet woman who had been overlooked became a symbol of hope and inspiration. Students and teachers alike carried her story with them, remembering that the impossible can be achieved, that hidden talent can shine, and that courage and dedication are often the most powerful forces of all. The next few weeks at the academy were unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. The quiet woman who had once gone unnoticed now moved through the halls with a quiet confidence. Students stopped to greet her respectfully, teachers asked for her advice, and even those who had once mocked or doubted her now looked at her with admiration. Her performance had changed the way everyone saw her, and more importantly, it had changed the way she saw herself. The academy offered her the chance to continue studying formally, to take lessons with the best teachers, and to participate in performances. But this opportunity was more than just technical training. It was a recognition of her talent, a second chance at a dream she had thought was long gone. For years, she had played only for herself, hidden from the world. Now she could play for others, inspire them, and finally step into the life she had always imagined. Her first formal lessons back at the academy were both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. She had spent years practicing alone, perfecting her technique and developing her understanding of music. Yet, being observed closely again, with teachers guiding her every move, brought a new challenge. But she embraced it. Each lesson was an opportunity to refine her skill, explore her creativity, and grow stronger as a musician. The students around her watched in awe. Many had once been her competitors, some had doubted her, and others had ignored her completely. Now they were seeing her dedication up close, witnessing the focus and passion she brought to every session. She was patient, encouraging, and kind, but also firm with herself. The music mattered to her more than recognition. More than applause, it was a part of who she was. One day, the academy organized a small recital for students and teachers. She was invited to perform. As she approached the piano, she felt a flutter of nerves, but also excitement. The room was filled with familiar faces, all eager to hear her play again. Some of the students whispered quietly, others sat in stunned silence. Still remembering the first time she had played the impossible piece, she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memories of past performances and years of practice flow through her. She thought of the nights she had played alone, of the moments when life seemed too heavy, and of the determination that had carried her through. Every experience, every hardship, and every quiet hour spent practicing had led to this moment. Her fingers touched the keys gently at first, then with growing confidence. The music began softly, delicate, and emotional. But as she continued, it grew in strength and depth, filling the room with sound that was both beautiful and powerful. Each note carried her story, the struggles, the perseverance, the joy of returning to the music she loved. The audience was silent, captivated by the performance. Teachers and students alike felt the emotion in every note. Some had tears in their eyes, some felt a lump in their throats, and all felt a sense of awe. The woman had transformed the simple act of playing the piano into a story, a journey that everyone in the room could feel. When she reached the final notes, the silence lingered for a moment, as if no one dared break it. Then the applause erupted, filling the room with cheers and claps. It wasn't just appreciation for her skill, it was admiration for her courage, her dedication, and the journey that had led her here. People who had never thought much of her were now inspired. They had seen what perseverance could achieve, and how hidden talent, when nurtured and given a chance, could shine brighter than anyone expected. After the recital, students approached her with questions, eager to learn. "How do you make the music feel alive like that?" one asked. Another said, "I want to be as dedicated as you." "How do you stay motivated?" She smiled and answered each one patiently. She spoke about the importance of practice, of listening to music with your heart, and of never giving up even when circumstances make it difficult. Her words were simple, but they carried meaning. She didn't just teach music. She taught lessons about life, perseverance, and self-belief. The teachers also sought her advice. They were amazed by her insight and the way she could connect with both students and music. Some of them had been skeptical of her at first, but now they saw her not just as a talented musician, but as a mentor and an inspiration. Her presence had a ripple effect, changing the atmosphere of the academy. Students practiced with more focus, teachers approached lessons with renewed energy, and the academy became a place where talent was recognized, nurtured, and celebrated. No matter where it had been hidden before, as days turned into weeks, she began performing more often. Small recitals became larger gatherings. She was invited to play for community events, charity performances, and even local competitions. Each time she played, she felt a mix of nerves and excitement, but the music always carried her forward. She wasn't just performing. She was telling a story, sharing her journey, and showing the world that hidden talent can emerge at any time. Her life outside the academy also began to change. People who had once overlooked her started to notice her dedication and skill. Some students became close friends, seeking guidance and learning from her example. Others who had doubted her approached her with respect, recognizing the years of quiet dedication that had led to her success. And through it all, she remained humble, always remembering the long road she had traveled to get here. One afternoon, as she walked through the academy hallways, a student stopped her. "I've been thinking," the student said, "I want to practice like you. I want to be able to play not just for recognition, but because I love it. Can you help me?" She smiled warmly. "Of course. That's the most important thing, loving what you do. Everything else comes after." She realized that her journey had come full circle. Once she had been the student, unnoticed and hidden. Now she was guiding others, passing on the lessons she had learned, and inspiring a new generation to pursue their passions. No matter how impossible they seemed, the academy had become a different place because of her. Students who had been competitive and anxious learned to support each other. Teachers who had been strict and judgmental learned to see beyond appearances. And she, who had once felt invisible and underestimated, had become a symbol of perseverance, talent, and courage. Her story spread beyond the academy walls. Local newspapers featured her journey, telling how a quiet woman had been given an impossible piano challenge and had amazed everyone with her skill. People admired her not just for her music, but for her dedication and resilience. She had shown that life's challenges don't have to define you, and that hidden talent, when nurtured and given a chance, can change everything. Through it all, she remained grounded. She didn't perform for fame or attention. She performed because she loved music, because she wanted to share a part of herself that had been waiting to emerge for so long. And in doing so, she inspired countless others to believe in themselves, to pursue their dreams, and to never underestimate the power of perseverance. Her journey was a reminder that life can be unpredictable. Sometimes opportunities appear when you least expect them. Sometimes people who seem ordinary can achieve extraordinary things. And sometimes the world finally recognizes what has always been there, a quiet, hidden brilliance that just needed a chance to shine. The academy celebrated her growth, her performances, and her influence. Students and teachers alike learned that recognition isn't just about appearance or early success. True talent is often hidden, waiting for patience, perseverance, and courage to reveal it. She had proven that by stepping forward, embracing the challenge, and sharing her gift, one could inspire change and leave a lasting mark on the world. And so her life transformed. The woman who had once been overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated became a symbol of hope, perseverance, and talent realized. She continued to perform, teach, and inspire, showing that passion and dedication could overcome even the toughest obstacles. In every performance, in every lesson, and in every interaction with students and teachers, she carried the same quiet strength that had led her through years of struggle and practice. She had faced the impossible, played it flawlessly, and in doing so, had not only changed her own life but had touched the lives of everyone around her. Her journey was proof that no dream is too far, no talent too hidden, and no obstacle too great. With dedication, courage, and love for what you do, anything is possible. And as she sat at the piano, playing her music for the world to hear, she knew that this was only the beginning of a life filled with hope, inspiration, and endless possibilities.